Hello friends, I have to tell you all about C60 Purple Power. Since I started using C60, which may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man, I feel amazing, and you should too. I have more energy, I sleep better, and I've lost over 30 pounds. But please go check it out for yourself. It has so many amazing benefits. Just click the link in the description or visit c60purplepower.com and use coupon code KNOWLEDGE10 to get 10% off your order plus free shipping. That's C60 Purple Power. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, my guest is Terry Lovelace. Before I bring him on, I want to tell you about how you can protect yourself from harmful EMF radiation. Did you know that your phone, computer, or tablet you're using right now to watch this video is emitting harmful EMF radiation? It's scientifically proven to interfere with many physiological processes in our body and harm us in many ways, most especially the brain and nervous system. Children's brains absorb more than twice the amount of EMF radiation than us adults, which means it's important to not only protect yourself, but also your children. Check out EMF Harmonize. They offer protection for your phone, computer, or tablet, and your routers. I have one on my computer and my cell phone. I've noticed a difference. I'm not feeling as groggy. I'm sleeping better. I have more energy during the day, even after spending hours in front of my computer or near my phone. The products were created by a mechanical engineer with 3 decades of experience in EMFs and telecommunication. You can use the link below to check out EMF Harmonize and protect yourself today. Also, subscribe to Forbidden Knowledge News on lbry.com. It's our official backup channel. We also have a brand new show called Beyond Classified. It's exclusively on Rokfin. Rokfin is an awesome new platform for free-thinking content creators, independent media. You're going to find tons of great content creators there. You're going to find all the topics that are no longer allowed here on YouTube. It's all on Rokfin. You can click that link in the description to sign up for that. Also, you can get tickets to Forbidden Knowledge NewsCon 2021. It's going to be April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. They're going to have 12 amazing presenters. Visit forbiddenknowledge.news to check out this year's awesome lineup and get your tickets today. And finally, I just want to thank everybody that's made donations. We don't have big corporate sponsors, and it's because of you guys that support us that we're able to bring you these amazing guests and continue bringing you this important information every day. If you'd like to make a donation, those links are in the description. Tonight, I want to welcome Terry Lovelace. He is a 6-year veteran of the United States Air Force. He completed a bachelor's degree in psychology at Park University in 1979. He later earned a Juris Doctor at Western University of Michigan Law School. He passed the Michigan bar examination on his first attempt. His legal career began in private practice, where he handled a variety of civil litigation and criminal defense cases. He entered public service as an assistant attorney general and later as a general counsel for LBJ Tropical Medical Center in the U.S. territory of American Samoa. Elected by his peers, he served a 1-year term as president of the American Samoa Bar Association. He retired in 2012 as an assistant attorney general for the state of Vermont. He is author of Incident at Devil's Den and now Devil's Den: The Reckoning. He continues to write and is a frequent speaker at UFO events, and his story was filmed for Strange Curiosity, a television documentary by Nine Diamond Production Company. Terry, welcome back. How are you doing tonight? I don't think I can hear you there.
I'm sorry. I said thanks very much. I appreciate the kind introduction, and it's great to be back.
Yes, I was looking forward to this. Last time you were on, we barely scratched the surface of your experiences. Now's a perfect time to talk again and get a little deeper into your encounters and talk about your new book, Devil's Den: The Reckoning. Now, I'd like to know, to start off with, did you write the new book because you had new memories or new experiences, or just maybe a little bit of both?
You know, it's a combination of factors. I left a lot of facts left unanswered, a lot of questions left unanswered when I published the first book, such as, what exactly became of Toby, I left people hanging as far as when I published Devil's Den on March 10th of 2018. A young man named Rodney Letterman had disappeared, vanished from Devil's Den State Park. And on March of 2019, there was kind of a dramatic end to that. And I promised readers I'd let them know the outcome of that. So that's kind of an interesting story. It's kind of a cool story. And I also wanted to fill them in on some other odds and ends. There's an entire chapter about early childhood experiences that I'd left out of the first book at the suggestion of my editor, because he thought, well, you included enough about your childhood, but I think it's worth looking at. Some information from the entity Betty that contacted me. I also, in the back of Devil's Den, I included an email address, and I said, look, I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but if you've had a really interesting or bizarre encounter and you'd like to talk to somebody about it, email me, and I promise I'll return your email. Well, I've got close to 1,500 emails to date since 2018. And some people have told me some pretty incredible stories. And I boiled out of the 1,500, well, 1,400 at the time, I boiled down about 400 and selected about 50 of what I thought were the very best, very credible, just really cool stories. And I vetted them as well as I could. I spoke with the people and got their permission to publish their stories. And there are 30 short stories published in the back of the book. And I wouldn't mind commenting on a story or two, or sharing a story or two with you.
Definitely. Yeah, I'd love to get into that. And I want to kind of get into some of the sections of your book, starting with, you mentioned childhood experiences that you really didn't mention before. Could you kind of tell us about some of those?
Yeah, sure. I tell the story about how, the true story about how I, my parents wouldn't believe me. They thought overactive imagination. They were pretty disturbed because I'd have these screaming nightmares and wake up the whole family. And I had these, as I reported in Devil's Den, I had these 4 little entities that would come into my room at night, which is interesting because I had 4 little circus monkeys, as crazy as that sounds. I had a cousin at the same time, about my same age, down in Arkansas, northern Arkansas, middle of the state, nowhere near Devil's Den, who was experiencing little clowns in his room. And I guess the circus theme kind of fit with E.T., for the Lovelace family. But
that's interesting.
People wrote to me telling me that when they were kids, between 4 and 6, 7 years old, that they would see, everything. Clowns were the most prevalent, but I heard owls and raccoons and deer and glowing orbs and walking little gray aliens and just all kind of variety of things that people saw as children and either dismissed as a dream or didn't remember until they read my book.
Now, from your childhood to the time you had your experience in 1977, was there anything kind of between that, or was there, nothing really?
There were 2 brief episodes. And when I was 8 years old, and things were kind of coming to an end with the Monkey Men abductions and that type of thing. In May of 1968, when I was, May of 1963, when I was 8 years old, I was in my backyard, and I don't think I've told you this story. I was shooting a bow and arrow, shooting arrows into a bale of hay. Which is kind of a lethal thing to give an 8-year-old, but it was a different time. And I'm in St. Louis City. We lived in a row house, so we have neighbors on all sides of us. It was a Saturday. It was a beautiful day. And there was like 1 million people out, cutting grass, hanging up laundry, dogs, cats, kids, cars all over the place. It's a busy place. And as I'm loading an arrow into the notch of my bow, I'm looking down and I saw this circular shadow move across my feet. And I looked up, and as soon as I looked up, I had this odd effect, this odd auditory change. And all the noises in the neighborhood sounded muted. It was like I had my hands pressed against my ears or something. And I looked up and I saw this thing, 50 feet over my head, and thought it was just the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. It was cool in a way that, like a new Alfa Ferrero or like a new sports car is on a showroom floor. It was that kind of cool. No fear whatsoever. And I watched it for a few moments, and it shot off like 0 to 500 miles an hour and is gone in a flash. And as soon as it was gone, all the sounds came back. And, no one else in the neighborhood saw a thing, which is kind of crazy. And then, 3 years later, when I was 11, I woke up in the middle of the night to some flashing lights, and I saw a typical saucer. Could have been the same one. I don't know. Right outside my bedroom window, second-story bedroom window. So those were the only two events that I had. And from age 11, for the next 11 years, I had no contact, no intervention, no problems whatsoever. But when I was 22 and in the Air Force, that was the event in 1977.
Now, for the audience that may not be familiar, which I'm sure most of the audience is by now, I was hoping you could give maybe a brief synopsis of your story, because I know you told it last time, but it's such an incredible story. I think it would help the audience if they heard a synopsis of what happened to you on that evening.
Sure. Let me see if I can shorten it up just a bit, but get all the
major details there.
Yeah. My friend Toby, guy I worked with, we were both EMTs, first responders at Whiteman Air Force Base emergency room. And we worked the night shift from 11 p.m. till 8 a.m. And he came up to me one night and said, look, I got an idea. Let's go camping. And I was kind of dismissive of the idea at first, but I had a new camera. I wanted to photograph wildlife. He said he knew a perfect place to go, 6.5 hours south of where we were stationed. But he said it was worth the drive, and he kind of talked me into it. I'm sure, said, sure, let's go. So in June, we went, and we didn't stay in a campground. We wanted to stay someplace, we thought we'd never been camping in our lives, but we wanted to be real outdoorsmen, right? So we trespassed into what we thought was a nature preserve. But actually, it's a set of federal land. If you go to Google Earth, you can see it. The place where we stayed is a plateau that's still there. And it should be covered with 40-year-old mature trees by now, but it's not. And we made our way to the top of this plateau. And I mean, we were very far away. We were in the middle of nowhere. Set up camp, did all the fun stuff you do when you're camping. And we're sitting around a campfire that evening, and in a lull in our conversation, I noticed, and it sounds cliche, I know, but it's true, that the sounds of the forest, the crickets, tree frogs, all the insects that make noise, they all fell silent. And it unnerved me. It didn't faze my friend, but it unnerved me. And a few minutes later, he has his head turned to the left and he's looking at something. And I'm about to ask him, what are you looking at? And he asked me, were those lights there before? And I knew there were no lights anywhere that we could see. So I stood up because I couldn't see the lights because his torso was in the way. And on the western horizon, there was this set of 3 little stars in a tight little triangle. And we're looking at them. They're completely out of place, and they rotated like they were on an axis and turned about 120 degrees and aligned themselves with the base of the triangle parallel with the horizon. And then they started to go up. And as soon as they started to go up, I had this feeling of calm wash over me. And that all that nervousness that I had, all that anxiety that I felt about the noises being gone, that was all gone. I felt semi-sedated. And we watched this thing climb up to what I call a ceiling, where it leveled out. And then it did a glide on a plane, like with the apex of the triangle pointed directly in our direction. So we knew it was headed toward us. And it came in over the forest at about 5,000 feet. And we saw the shadows because we were on this elevated plateau level with the tops of the trees of the forest. So we saw the shadow move across the forest. There were lights on the point of each point of the triangle. Obviously, that's where the 3 lights came from. Those dimmed somewhat as it descended. And it parked 3,000 feet over the meadow. Unfortunately, we had camped off to the side, so this thing wasn't directly over our heads. There were some lights that it shined down. It shined down a beam of white light that looked like the same quality of a searchlight cutting through fog. And that landed in our campfire for maybe 60 seconds and then clicked off. And then there was like a laser beam like thing that darted all around the campsite. And, I had the thought that this thing is scanning us. It's checking us out. And the laser thing struck me in the chest a couple times. I never felt a thing. It hit my body. And all this time we're feeling that sedated feeling. And then when the laser thing lasted just maybe a couple minutes. And then shortly thereafter, there's no conversation between us. I mean, we're just in a weird place, kind of a mix between apathy and mild, not apathy, disinterest, but definitely sedation. And then I felt suddenly a shift from that sedation to I was sleepy. I mean, all I wanted to do was get to the tent and go to sleep, and made my way to the tent and fell in, and my friend went in front of me, and we were out as soon as we hit the inflatable air mattress. We were just gone. And, woke up sometime later to flashing lights outside, and, the thing had descended to 30 feet over the meadow, and we were scared to death. Saw some little guys walking around in the meadow that we could really only see during flashes of light because of this thing was so close to the ground. There was no ambient starlight to speak of. It was
Now, what could you make out of the little guys again?
about a dozen to 15. They were paired up in twos and threes, and I first thought they were children. And I asked my friend Toby, I said, man, what are these little kids doing out here in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night? And he said, Terry, man, those ain't no little kids. Look at them again. They're not human beings. And when he said that, I kind of snapped back to reality. And then the fear set in. And then I was afraid I'd cough or we'd sneeze or do something, draw attention to ourselves. And we didn't know they were long done with us.
That's terrifying. And, you didn't have the remainder of your memories come back till later on. But after the incident, Toby didn't do so well and take things well, right?
Toby did not do well. And I have to admit, I had my struggles as well, but nowhere near what he had. We were ordered by the Air Force to have no contact with one another, which according to Robert Hastings, who wrote the book UFO and Nukes has interviewed hundreds of guys from nuclear bases, but where we were at. And he said it's very common when two people have the same experience, or 3 or 5, you break them up. You don't allow them to, which makes sense. 2 people have, they can each bolster each other's story. It's just a more credible story if you have 2 people that saw the same thing. So, but he fell into, we spoke with his ex-wife, and who came to visit us when we were in Michigan, and she told us that he just fell apart. That he wasn't so much a daytime drinker, but he was afraid of the night. He was afraid to sleep, and he would just pound vodka before he'd go to bed. And I kind of understand that in a way. I mean, sleep is when you've had an experience like this, it changes us, and I felt vulnerable in my sleep. I mean, that's. It was hard for me to sleep too. I still take a couple Benadryl. I still keep with the light on at night. I could understand, but I could also see where that would be, really harmful behavior to fall into that. And he did not do so well, and he ended up passing away on September 4th, 2007. I found that out after I had been told by someone in law enforcement that he was killed in a crossover car accident while in Michigan coming out of Flint. So
yeah, that's a very interesting aspect to that he would lie to you about that.
It's very interesting. And again, I apologize to law enforcement because, I've worked as a prosecutor. I worked for law enforcement. I respect law enforcement. But this guy lied to me, and I don't know why he lied to me. And I don't want to tar all of law enforcement with the same brush here, but I think that somewhere there's a file that has my name on it and Toby's name on it, and it says these guys shouldn't get together. I mean, that's the only conclusion I can come to.
Yeah, I mean, that I wouldn't doubt that for a second. Now, it wasn't until much later that you actually remembered being on the ship and some of the events that occurred. Could you talk about some of the things that you remembered, some of your most profound memories from being on the ship?
Sure, sure. It's when Toby made that statement to me in the tent. Don't you remember, Terry? They took us and they hurt us whenever he was talking about those aren't human beings. As soon as he said those words, I had mental flashes of being inside that thing, but just only the briefest. And I'll be clear, I've never had a clear linear memory of everything that happened to us because we were in there probably 5 hours. But I do have some recollection. Now, the OSI did interrogate me under the influence of hypnotism and sodium amytal. I tried to resist the hypnosis, but I couldn't really resist the sodium amytal. And that actually was very helpful in that brought back, that drug is classified as a hypnotic for a reason. I mean, it's a short acting hypnotic, but I mean, it was like, bam, and it put me in a different place. I could relive in my mind's eye these events as they happen. And I think without that, I wouldn't remember half of what I remember. And I think that remembering is very important, because I think if you come out of this with no memory, that and it's stuffed down into your subconscious, that maybe like Toby, a lot of it will filter up in unhealthy ways and manifest as alcoholism or drug abuse or self-destructive behavior. So I'm glad that I have what I have. It gives me enough to kind of process what happened. Although, also 30 years of nightmares, 40 years of nightmares. But what I saw on the ship was this. I recall being inside the ship, and I don't know if we were actually inside the ship that we were seeing or if they took us someplace else. There's a drawing of the ship on my website, terrylovelace.com, if anyone wants to see it, a drawing that I made contemporaneous with the event. And I was aware that we were inside of someplace, but the inside looked much bigger than the outside of this thing looked like it. And we were in a large open atrium, and I couldn't move. I was like Calvin Parker described, I couldn't move anything except my eyes. And I was aware that they had stripped us both, and we were holding our boots and our clothing in our arms like this. And again, all I can move is my eyes. So I can see the far side of this thing. And I mean, from the outside, it looked like the size of a Walmart. From the inside, it looked like an NFL stadium. And again, I don't know if I was actually inside of that craft with some kind of different kind of physics, or maybe they took us someplace. I don't know. And I was aware that Toby was next to me. And I saw a lot of activity. I saw like the little gray guys running all over the place. I saw what looked like a golf cart with no wheels on it moving. I saw three silver saucers lined up. I mean, like planes under a carrier deck parked with looked like large garage doors. And I also noticed, and of the little vignettes that I have of being inside that thing, this is the most frightening to me, and it's been the focus of nightmares for me for a long time. And I noticed that there was this being about 6 foot tall that was not gray. He was chalkish pink in color, but he was humanoid. He had no ears to speak of and no cartilage for a nose, just 2 nostrils, a slit for a mouth. And he had the large eyes, but they weren't exaggerated like some of the motion pictures. These were more like a pair of wraparound Ray-Bans. And I'm straining my eyes to the left as far as I can go to see him. Because as he walked across my field of view, I could tell he was somebody. I mean, he walked with an air of authority. He was twice as tall as everybody, but he was obviously a different species of thing. While I'm straining my eyes, just by happenstance, he turns his head and we locked eyes. And this is hard to explain, but this guy was in my head, and I knew he was in my head. And in an instant, he knew me. He knew my wife, he knew my secrets, he knew my dreams, my hopes, everything. He knew everything about me, and he downloaded it from me. And that's a very, very ugly feeling. It's just a huge invasion of your privacy, and talk about a feeling of vulnerability. It was just horrendous. And, you know, what I could see back from those eyes was just raw intellect. You know, the way I like to analogize this is we have a dog, we have an English setter, and he'll come over and put his head in my lap and look at me with those big brown eyes, you know, and I pat him on the head and say, good boy. And, you know, but we understand our respective roles. He knows I'm the alpha. You know, I'm the one that gives him food, and he's the one that gives me unconditional love and trust. But he knows who I am. We each know our respective roles. When I had this exchange with this entity, I felt like the dog. It was humbling. I felt like this thing, whatever I was looking at, was like 500 rungs up the evolutionary ladder from me. And that's frightening. And I think that's a big revelation. That's a big epiphany to come to, that we're not top dog, that we're not top species, that there are others out there that are superior to us. And this thing was absolutely superior to me.
Check out our friends at Linquistity Gifts. Linquistity Gifts is a metaphysical store offering natural gemstone bead bracelets, signature and zodiac, designed and made in the United States, as well as raw and polished stones, crystal balls, pendulums, tarot cards, natural crystal points, wands, and so much more. Their beautiful signature designed bracelets can aid with creativity, balance, focus, and well-being. They can even customize the bracelets for you. Just send them an email to find out pricing and availability. Visit their website using the link in the description, or visit linquistitygifts.com and use coupon code FKN to get 10% off your first order over $20. And right now they are offering $5 off the purchase of 2 or more bracelets. linquistitygifts.com. Yeah, that's one of the parts of your story that really sticks with me, and it's the most really profound is, you know, that this being could just pick you apart like that and know everything about you and be such a higher intellect and such a more, advanced species than us. That's, it can be a terrifying thought, just like you said. Now, after they returned you, you had some kind of like burns on your skin, right?
We did. I had the worst sunburn I'd ever had in my life. I mean, it was just, and you know, it was under my arms, it was on my scalp, it was on the soles of my feet. I mean, I was burned everywhere. And that didn't make any sense. I mean, I never took my shirt off, certainly never took my pants or my boots off that I knew of. So we weren't out in the sun. We didn't bake in the sun. But the most annoying thing was I had what was called a flash burn to my eyes. It's basically a sunburn to the cornea of your eye. It's what an arc welder would get if they didn't use that hood to shield their vision. And that's very painful. It feels like you have sand in your eyes. You're very photophobic. You want to be in a dark place.
Now, do you remember anything that happened on the ship that could correlate to those burns, or anything else that may have happened, any experiments, something like that?
Yeah, there are two that come to mind immediately, and that is that this place was incredibly lit up. I mean, it was, and I couldn't find, there were no light fixtures to speak of. It was like the light just radiated out of every place. And everything was either stainless steel or like a white porcelain, white gloss. The floor, I believe, was gray. It may have been textured somehow. Again, without being able to move my head down or up, it was very difficult, except what I could see in the distance. And it was, I would just, that's the best description of it I can give. The second part, there was a second incident that I should describe for you briefly, where they took me, first I heard a woman screaming, and then I noticed that I could perceive that my friend Toby was gone. He wasn't there. And then I heard him because I recognized his voice, and he screamed, oh my God, no, and then screamed. So I knew that they were going to come for me, and I'm terrified and I can do nothing. And they came, and I had a gray on either side of me, and they moved me along, and I glided on the floor. I never moved my feet. I didn't feel my feet gliding on the surface, but somehow I glided along, and they took me down a corridor. When I went down this corridor, I was aware that to my right, I could see what looked like fish tanks. To the left was just a white wall, but to my right, there were this group of fish tanks that started off small, and then it got progressively larger the further down the hallway that we went. And one of these, like large aquariums like you'd see in a doctor's office or something, bigger than a household aquarium, there was pink water and what looked to be like a puppy. Puppies have those folds of skin.
Right.
That's what this looked like. And I was straining my eyes to the right, and it opened its eyes, and that scared me to death. That scared me. And that's a subject to nightmares.
Yeah, that is. Wow. So, I mean, do you think that they were doing some type of hybrid or DNA experiments, possibly?
You got to be breeding something. I mean, it's obviously something in vitro. It's something outside of a body. Whatever that thing came from, I don't know what it was. I'm sure it wasn't a puppy. But what type of being it was, I don't know.
Right. Now, I'm going to pull up a picture that you have here of, let's see. It's Devil's Den. It is the area around Devil's Den, the plateau, that there's still no trees there. Could you talk a little bit about what is going on there today?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I never thought to look for this place on Google Earth, but from my description of where it was and how we got to it, and the physical description of it, with the water at the end and the like, and the going up the plateau, the guys from Astonishing Legends actually found these images and sent them to me. And I'm just blown away, because this place should be covered with 40-year-old mature trees by now, and it's not. And I got a close-up. You can zoom in to the top of that plateau, and if you do that, I had posted it to my Facebook page, and I got a message from a guy, a friend who's a landscaper in Alabama, and he said if you look close, you can see that the grass is cut into like 6 or 8 inch lengths, and he said that he could see tractor marks where like a farm tractor had probably pulled what he called a brush hog. I don't know. I don't see a lot there other than what looks like cut straw to me. But what I don't get is why that land is owned by the Bureau of Land Management, which is the United States government. And why would the United States government spend gas for 50 years to cut the top of a plateau in the middle of nowhere just to keep it deforested? That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that is very strange. Now, do you have any thoughts as to, other than why they may have done that?
I mean, it's kind of the obvious. I don't know the truth, but I mean, I can make an assumption, and that is that what we saw comes and goes there. I really believe that.
Yeah, that would be that wouldn't be that far out of a thought, to think that they've come back. Especially with the trees not being there and everything, is very interesting.
Well,
now,
it fits perfectly over that triangle too.
What's that?
It fits perfectly over that area that's semi-triangle.
Yes, yeah, that is super interesting. Now, also in your new book, you talk about some newer experiences that you've had. The first one's not that new, but in 1987, you had some missing time during a motorcycle ride, right?
I did, and I explained that in my first book. It's called The Last Motorcycle Ride, but there are some details that I should add, and that is that I was on my bike doing a solo ride early on a Sunday morning on a route that I was very familiar with. That was a rural area. There's, it was farmland mostly, and I I was coming up to a turn and I was throttling back from about 80 down to about 60 as I'm approaching this turn. And all of a sudden, I mean, like this, I'm on my bike and I'm doing 30 on a gravel road. And that really confused me because I would never take my motorcycle on a gravel road. I mean, bad for the paint job, bad for the bike. It's a little bit dangerous. You know, I don't want to get my bike dusty. You know, I just would not do that. But I blamed it on being absent-minded or being absorbed in thought. Later, I found out that I was missing 2 hours when I got home, and my wife was frantic, thinking I was, you know, lying on the road somewhere dead in a ditch. What happened was when I was there and I explained this, I got off of the bike and I held the helmet in my left hand. And there was a saucer about 50 feet in diameter, 50 feet or so down the road, above the roadway, about 3 or 4 feet above the roadway. And I recall being in that zoned out place where I wasn't afraid or I wasn't much of anything. And a ramp descended, and I walked up the ramp, helmet in my hand, and I met Betty, the entity that I saw in 2017 that I remembered as Sue from when I was 4, 5, and 6 years old. Same entity intervening throughout my entire life.
Now, this was your first encounter with Betty?
This was my first adult encounter with Betty.
Your first adult encounter. What did she tell you anything important this time?
In 1987, we greeted each other like old friends. I remembered her from my childhood back then. And that's when we were shuttled from the saucer into some other craft. And that's when I was walking with Betty and I explained down a corridor of what I thought was some kind of huge warehouse. And we were looking out these giant windows at the stars, and there were just a trillion stars. These windows were like, 20 by 60 feet. I mean, they were just enormous. And I had no idea where we were at. And I felt no sense of motion whatsoever. And from my right, there rolled this giant white object, which was the moon. And I thought, it scared me to death. I thought it's going to hit us. And Betty told me telepathically, as that's how she communicates, that no, that's the moon. It's in motion. It's not in motion. We're in motion. You're aboard a ship and we're traveling. And
now, was Betty completely humanoid looking?
She looks very human, except that, well, she's very petite, and her eyes are all black without any sclera or irises. She has no cartilage or ears or a nose, and she has sparse hair on top of her head. But the most unusual feature, two most unusual features, are that she has long arms and very long fingers. I could see 4 long fingers. I don't know if there was a thumb tucked in back of those fingers or not, but that's what I saw. And the back of her head was bulbous. It was big. It was bigger than a human head. When you saw her from behind, if she wasn't wearing a wig or something, you could see that it wasn't a human head.
Now, how did this experience end, the one in 1987?
It ended with me being set back down by the motorcycle and them taking off. And I had no memory of this until she visited me in October 2017. And then,
now that we're talking about it, we might as well tell us about what happened that time in 2017.
Sure. This was amazing. And this is in the last chapter of Incident at Devil's Den, and I also review it in the new book. What happened was I woke up in my living room sometime in the early morning, 2:30ish or so. I open my eyes and I'm sitting bolt upright in my chair in the living room where I normally sit. And I am sedated. I have that sedated feeling again that you get whenever you're under their influence. And I glanced at the alarm system to my left, and it was set. And seated directly across from me is what I first took to be a petite Asian woman, with black hair, big black sunglasses. She wore a cotton black outfit, a blouse with extra long sleeves and the 4 long fingers sticking out, black slacks and black nursing shoes with high heat, with kind of a higher sturdy heel to kind of compensate for her short stature. She also had like a red scarf tied around her neck because her neck is pencil thin. So I think that the way that she was dressed, she could probably walk down the street of Denver and maybe not draw so much as a second notice. But the more I looked at her, well, it was crazy because it was a telepathic communication. I wasn't freaked out. I wasn't scared. She's seated in a non-threatening posture with her legs crossed, and I didn't feel threatened by her at all. And my first thought was, I wish she'd take off those sunglasses. And she did, like on cue. And I heard her voice in my head with crystal clarity, like any spoken word. And she said, "It's nice to see you again." And I commented that mentally, I commented that the wig looked ridiculous because I know that sounds crazy, but that was my second observation, was because her head is so large, the wig she wore was for a human head and it sat all askew on top of her head. And I called her Betty because she looked like Betty Rubble from the Flintstones. But I immediately recognized her as being the entity that I knew as Sue from when I was ages 4 through 8. Same woman, same being, had not aged a day. And she acknowledged that and said as much. And what I remember thinking that, my God, what if I think something? What if I think about her being an intruder? What if I think the wrong thing? Or what if I think of something inappropriate? Well, then, of course, if you think that, I mean, it's like telling a group of 4th graders, don't think of elephants. What are they going to do? They're going to think of elephants. Well, I thought of everything inappropriate flashed across my mind. I guess I'm human. I could,
Right.
And I swear she was embarrassed. And she said to me telepathically, "Terry, you can control your thoughts if you just try." Now, I'll never know if that was just said for my benefit or not. But it helped me to kind of feel grounded and kind of stay on point.
Wow, yeah, that is really interesting. I've had my own experience with speaking telepathically with an entity. This was through meditation, much different though. But I know how it feels to be able to have this instant kind of communication. It's kind of great to be able to communicate that way. I've never been able to experience that before.
It is great. Although I will say there's a reason why mankind in general doesn't communicate telepathically, and I don't think we're disciplined enough. I mean, in a meditative state would be a different thing, but it would be a disaster if we all had telepathic communication because, we could control our speech, but we can't control our thoughts. And
Right.
If our thoughts were an open book, I think that would be a terrible thing.
It could be, yeah, you're right. I don't know if everybody's ready for that one yet. But another part of this whole phenomenon is I have some pictures that I'm going to pull up as you talk about it. You've had some implants, and you have the actual X-rays and evidence to show that there are foreign objects there, right?
I do. As a matter of fact, I should mention that was the entire catalyst for me to come forth and write this book and speak publicly.
Yeah.
Was in 2012. I had some knee pain that was completely unrelated to the implants, by the way. My knee pain was just from a thing called a Baker's cyst, which is a benign cyst that you get. You catch it like you catch a cold. It causes knee pain for a couple of weeks, then it goes away. They're always benign. But in looking for the source of my knee pain, they discovered these things. And when they did, the radiology tech was like, have you had a shrapnel wound? You have been in an accident or something that could account for this metal in your leg? And I'm like, no, not that I know. I've never had any injury to that leg other than a skinned knee as a kid. And she said, well, you've got some foreign bodies in your leg. I've asked the radiologist to come down. And the radiologist came down and was obviously annoyed at being called down. But when he walked over and looked at my x-rays, he was interested. And above my knee there was a square object about the size of your fingernail with two wires attached that ran up my leg. I don't know how far they ran up because it went off the film. And then below my leg, well, I asked him to see. He said, you have some odd structures in your leg. And I said, well, can I see them? They're my x-rays. I'm not a radiologist, but I'd like to see my x-rays. And he was like, sure. So he popped it up in the box. And as soon as I saw that thing above my knee that has the square shape to it, it's obviously some kind of manufactured structure. It's not a naturally occurring artifact. As soon as I saw that, that was validation that these things did put their hands on me. And I had never thought about writing a book or speaking about this in any way, shape, or form until I saw that x-ray. And then I just could not reconcile that. I could not live with that without, I felt that I was compelled to tell the story and, accept the repercussions. My friends in the legal community didn't accept it so well, but you know what, there is a real UFO culture in this country with a lot of good people. And since I've written this book and come public, I think I've made many more friends than I've lost in the process. So.
Yeah, there is, once you get to know people in the community, like if you go to conferences, there's just kind of sense of, belonging and camaraderie amongst this community that you don't get many other places. I know whenever I've gone to conferences, it's a great feeling to be around so many like-minded people and understanding, and they're not going to look at you like you're crazy whenever you're telling your story.
Yes, it's a safe and non-judgmental place. And, when I run into somebody like Travis or Calvin Parker or, any number of people, it's like immediately we're, like we've known each other, we're just on the same wavelength. And that's reaffirming. It's validation to meet these people and know that you're not alone. You're not unique. I'm not unique.
Yeah, I definitely, I've experienced the same thing. Now, did you, for these implants, did they give you any problems? Did they cause any pain or anything like that?
No. The unique thing was the one above my knee. I had been a runner for 40 years. And I noticed that during my run, every time I would hit the 2-mile mark in my run, I started running in 1980. I'd read the book by Jim Fixx, who wrote the book all about running, but kind of turned running into a craze. If you think about it, prior to about the late 70s, you never saw anybody out running unless they were on an athletic field or maybe, cross-country kids in high school or college running across. But people didn't run generally for exercise. It just wasn't a thing until then. So I started running, and I noticed that every time I'd hit the 2-mile mark in my run, the spot above my knee and lateral would go completely numb. And I could take a pen and trace it. It was numb and kind of itchy, kind of the same sensation you get from a shot of Novocaine in your mouth. And I could trace the outline of it with a pen. It was perfectly circular. And that numbness would fade in about 30 minutes. And I asked my doctor about it in 1982. I said, this is kind of a weird thing, Doc. I got this spot on my leg that goes numb whenever I hit the 2-mile mark in my run. And she says, it's probably a, quote, histemic reaction. She says, people get them sometimes. If it doesn't affect your run, I wouldn't worry about it. So I never did. But when I saw that x-ray, immediately it registered with me that spot that would go numb on my leg lay right over the top of this structure that looks like an electrical device of some kind.
Now, go ahead.
I was just to say, the structures below my knee he found equally fascinating. He said, well,
Yeah,
first
didn't you
he
have
said, well,
something in your calf as well?
yes, that's what I'm getting to. Yep. There are two. There's the transistor-like thing above my leg, and then below my knee. Um, he said, well, you have some bones in your knee. And I said, well, isn't that, or, you know, I'm supposed to have, right? And he says, no, no, no. And he showed me in the calf muscle of my leg, you can see clearly there's like a floret pattern of white bone tissue with a little dot in the middle even. Um, and I said, what, you know, and he showed it to me and I'm like, what are those? And he says, well, he says, from X-ray film, he says, I can tell you that these are the density of human bone. But he said, I've never in my life seen human bone sprout in the middle of a muscle tissue. And far less, I've never seen it arrange itself in a symmetrical pattern like this. So I have no idea what this is. And his diagnosis was rule out Baker's cyst abnormal knee, was my radiologist report. So, and those objects are still there. The ones below my knee are still there.
Now, I also have a picture of something on your upper thigh that looks like a bruise, a triangular bruise. I'm going to pull that up here. Talk about that one.
I will. That happened. I explained that this entity, Betty, I had an encounter with her in my living room in third week in October 2017 when I was writing this book. And she warned me because I was having trouble getting these things taken out because I needed a cardiac clearance letter because I have heart disease. I've had 2 prior heart attacks. And the cardiologist, every cardiologist I went to, and I went to 5, I went to 3 in the VA system and 2 on my own dime that I paid for. The cardiologist explained to me that it's a risk versus benefit analysis, that the standard of care in this country is no matter how bad you want it out, if it's benign, you know, it's not worth the risk of infection and the risk of anesthesia to have them taken out. The risk is greater than the benefit. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but these are foreign objects. I want them out of my body. And she says, hey, you know, I got 500,000 other vets out there that have, you know, metal in their body that they picked up in Iraq or Vietnam or wherever, and they want it out yesterday too. But the standard of care is let it lay. If it's not causing you a problem, it's a bigger risk to remove it than it is to let it lay. So I had made arrangements with a Mexican surgeon in Tijuana to take them out for me. And we were going to finalize that agreement in December of 2017. Betty told me that if you continue with your plans to have the thing above your knee removed, that she called them hosts, what we refer to as their aliens. She said that they would remove the objects from your leg. I woke up on November 17th of 2017, about 3 weeks after Betty's visit, and I had these wounds on top of both of my legs. The bruising didn't come out for about 36 hours, but I had these puncture wounds at the top of my leg. Now, don't ask me why the wounds were at the top of my leg when the object was down by my knee. I don't know. My wife made the observation. You don't know how far up those wires went or what their purpose may have been. So I needed an x-ray. So I went out and I found a chiropractor that day. And I waited to see him. I had photographs of my x-rays showing the implants. And I wanted to see if they'd really come and taken out the transistor-like thing. And I waited to see the chiropractor, and he calls me back. He's very busy. He calls me back and says, "What are you hurt? How can I help you?" And I said, "Well, you know, I heard here." And he looked at the puncture wounds and he was kind of intrigued and said, "How did you get those?" And I said, "Well, doctor, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I think that in 1977, I was abducted by aliens and I had an implant put in my leg, and I think they came and took it out last night." And he says, "Okay, then I don't think we can help you today." And but you know what? I knew the chiropractors look at 100 x-rays a week. So he's got me by the elbow, right? And he's leading me to the front door. And I held up both of those sheets of paper. And fortunately, he looked at them long enough to get his attention. And he said, "Come with me." And we went back, we went in his office, and he was busy. I mean, people were knocking at the door, his phone's ringing. He sits down and he puts the 2 pieces of paper in front of me. And he says, "Give me the capsule version of this. How did you get these things in your body?" And I gave him a 3-minute story and how I think I got them there. I don't know for sure, but that's how I believe they got there. And he said, dig this. He said, well, I'll write a order for your x-ray. He says, I don't have x-ray machinery in the office. He says, we use a freestanding clinic about a mile down the street. He says, I'll write you an order for an x-ray of your knee, and I'll pay for it. And he said, bring it back and I'll read it for you. And he says, in exchange, I ask that you not use my name or the name of my clinic in your book. And I said, that's a deal. And I respected that agreement. And I had the x-rays in my desk. And sure enough, it shows the object above my knee was gone. However, I saw that it was gone. I held them up to the light in the car to the window and could see they were gone, or it was gone. And I dropped the x-rays off at his office, and he called me that night after dinner and said, well, did you see your x-rays? I said, yeah. And I said, it's kind of bittersweet. I mean, it's kind of evidence gone, but at least I had before and after films to show that it was there. Now it's not there. And he says, yeah, but didn't you see they left you something? And I said, no, I didn't see that. And he told me where to look. I had to go pick up the x-rays to see it. But and there's a picture of it in my book, and it's not real clear. It just looks like a white streak. But if you look at the x-ray film, there are two tiny wires about 1 centimeter long. One is bent at the very tip. And these are right in the middle of my leg, right next to my femur. They're much deeper in my leg. And I asked him, I said, because I think he's either an experiencer or, he's seen this on x-rays before because he was just too familiar with the process. And I said, Doc, if these things are so much more advanced than we are, how could they be so inept as to leave two stupid wires in my leg? And he says, you don't get it. They don't do anything by accident. He says, what they may have done is just give you an upgrade to a 2017 model of the 1977 model they removed. And I thought,
right, that makes sense.
Yeah, and they're still there.
That's absolutely amazing. Now, you also had one more experience in 2019, April 16th. Go ahead and tell us about that one, because that one's interesting, too. I have some pictures to kind of correlate it as well.
I will. Since Sony Walkman days, I sleep with the light on, the windows, PTSD. And I sleep with headphones. Well, I slept with headphones on and a Sony Walkman, and then now I graduated up. Now I have a shielded iPhone. In a special case. I wear a t-shirt to bed every night, and this is how I sleep. I sleep with it in my pocket with earbuds on, and I listen to meditative apps, and that drowns out the noises of the house, and I can sleep. And because otherwise I'll hear a noise and get freaked out and have to get up and investigate. So I've been doing this for years. That's the way I sleep. And I woke up at 5:55 a.m. on April 16th, 2019. I was sweating profusely and I was out of breath like I'd run 100 yards. And my earbuds are on my chest. But I'm not worried about that because I'm sitting up and I think I'm having another heart attack or something. I didn't have any chest pain though, but I'm short of breath. So my wife called an ambulance, and I was taken to Methodist Hospital. I have those bills I could show too. Taken to Methodist Hospital. And I mean, I've had enough heart trouble that I know the drill. It's a chest x-ray, cardiac enzymes, and an EKG. And by the time I got to the hospital, my vital signs had fallen back down to normal. So they kept me for observation for about 6 hours and then cut me loose. Told me to follow up with my VA cardiologist. So my wife and I go home, had dinner, and it's my routine after dinner to go for about a mile walk. So I grabbed my iPhone because I use my iPhone health app to measure my walk every night. So I clicked on my iPhone health app and I saw that I climbed 6 flights of stairs at 5:23 a.m. Now at 5:23 a.m., I was sound asleep next to my wife. I didn't get up. I didn't wake up until 5:55 a.m. And there's a single bar showing that I climbed 6 flights of stairs, which is 10 feet per flight of stairs, which is equivalent to 60 feet. I took the app first to T-Mobile, and they didn't have a clue. Then I took it to Apple, and Apple kept the phone for 4 hours and did a diagnostic. And I came back and I talked to a young lady who was a technician and actually she had a degree in electrical engineering. And she told me that at between 5:23 and 5:24 a.m., my phone, her words, was 60 feet above your home. And she said, normally, because I know if I'm in a parking garage and I have to walk up 5 flights of stairs, because, there's an XY axis there, where the Y axis, the vertical axis, indicates height in 10-foot increments. The X axis on the bottom runs from left to right and indicates passage of time. Well, I can't climb 6 flights of stairs in less than a minute. It's going to take me a while. So I'll typically on the health app, I'll get a stair step type readout showing as I reach the first flight and then the second flight. And that's measured. I didn't know this. I thought it was a GPS measurement, but it's not. It's measured by barometric pressure, changing barometric pressure, which kind of blew me away. But
yeah, wow.
So I have no memory of what happened that night, but it did bug me a lot. And in December, I went and saw a friend of mine who is a board-certified psychiatrist with a practice here in Dallas. And I told him I wanted to do a hypnotic regression. Could he do that? He said, sure. He says he does it routinely in his practice. And we've been friends for years. And so I went to his office, and this was in December of 2019, of 2020, pardon me. Yeah, of 2020. Because I wasn't sure, I wanted to do this. But he did it, and he's also an MD. As a psychiatrist, he's an MD first, and he's aware of my heart condition. So he had me hooked up to a blood pressure cuff, and he monitored my blood pressure. And I think because we're so familiar, I had kind of trouble getting under and into a hypnotic state. But I finally got there, and he asked me to go through what happened, and I told him that I could recall my physical body going up through the roof, through the ceiling, through a dark space, which I assume is the attic, and popping out through the top. I know this sounds crazy. And it was just dawn. It was just breaking day, and it was a beautiful morning. Lots of stars out, and directly over my head, maybe 50 feet up, is this giant saucer. And the bottom of it opened up like the iris of a camera lens. And it was just black underneath. And I screamed, and he took my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was high. And he said, we're gonna stop here, and we're gonna reconvene in a couple of weeks, and we'll get some more into it. We've not been able to do that. He's 70 years old. He works still sees a full patient load, but he's 70 years old, and he's afraid of COVID. So, and we weren't able to do it by Zoom. He wasn't able to get me under in a Zoom setting. He said, we need to be, one-on-one. So someday soon it'll be safe to get back together, and we can pick it up where it left off, because I'd like to know the rest of what happened to me that night.
Yeah, definitely. Would definitely love to hear that as well. Now, to close out tonight, when I look at experiences like yours, many other abductees, contactees that I've had on, experiences that basically all kind of correlate, and when you look at the bigger picture, to me it seems like we're some sort of experiment for these advanced beings. Like our whole existence could possibly be some sort of either experiment or project for these advanced beings. I don't know, what do you think about that? Do you think that's possible?
I think that's probable. I do. I mean, I think they study us like we'd study mold spores in a petri dish, And I don't think that this is limited to one species. I mean, I think we're being visited by multiple species. It's just like my analogy with the dog. They're just smarter than we are.
Yeah, and if it's like the same thing we do with insects or animals. We're going to, study them and experiment on them and see what we can learn about them. So it's all fascinating stuff. Now, since that last incident in 2019, you haven't had anything else happen to you?
No, nothing significant.
But that's probably okay with you, huh?
That's just fine with me. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Terry, thank you so much for coming on again. For anyone that wants to get your new book, Devil's Den: The Reckoning, what's the best way they can do so? Amazon?
It's on Amazon. Yes, it's currently ranked number 3. It was number 1 in new releases, I'm happy to say. So I also included, like I say, 30 stories from other people in the back of the book that are interesting. So you might find something that really resonates with you if you've had an experience. So
awesome. Sounds
thank
good.
you for the opportunity to come back. It's good to be here.
Yes, I'd love to have you back on again. There's so much we could talk about, and especially if you get that other regression done, we got to hear about that too. So Terry, thank you so much for coming on, and until next time, everyone else, have an excellent evening.